What's happening, y'all? Welcome inside the Fantasy Stock Exchange. Bush coming at you solo today with a bit of a fun video. Today, we're going to be talking about my top 5 rest of season breakouts and my top 5 rest of season sleepers. Now, I farmed out to the Discord this morning saying, hey, what should I do for Saturday's video? I need an idea. And this was my favorite one that you guys suggested. So shout out to Beanie Weenie in the Discord for the idea. The other way I would describe this video basically is that the top 5 breakouts are going to be like low-key trade targets for you guys, and the top 5 sleepers might be stashes or waiver ads to get onto your roster if they're still available. So we usually do superlatives during the offseason, but I think it'd be kind of fun to do the mid-season with these breakouts and sleepers. So enough mumbo jumbo. As always, if you guys enjoy, leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here, and comment any of your thoughts down below. Who is your biggest breakout candidate down the stretch? Who is your biggest sleeper down the stretch? But let's get right into it. Okay, so for these breakout candidates, I am going to avoid guys like, Drake London and Garrett Wilson, who should be relatively obvious breakout candidates. I'm going to try and throw in some deeper names. I don't feel like we talk enough about deeper names on this channel. So in some cases, some of these guys might be on your waiver wire. If they are, go ahead and pick them up. If they are throw-in pieces and trades, again, make sure to go out and send some offers for them as well. So we're going to start with my first breakout candidate, which is Wan'Dale Robinson, wide receiver from the New York Giants. He would have made this list regardless of what happened this week with Kadarius Toney, but very encouraging to see the usage out of Wan'Dale Robinson. I talked about it in the wide receiver start sits video. But basically, we saw in week 6, Wan'Dale Robinson came off of a hamstring injury, I believe it was, from week 1. After a 5-game absence, he comes back, runs 35% of the routes, gets a 36% targets per route run, scores a touchdown, and earns some more playing time in week 7 to the tune of 81% of the routes, which was actually more than Darius Slayton ran, 25% target share, very low ADOT type of targets, but definitely encouraging nonetheless. It seems that we have a full-time player on our hands now. For those of you guys that are unaware, Wan'Dale Robinson was a second-round pick out of Kentucky with a good production profile, good tape, good athletic profile, just a little bit undersized, right? 5'10", 185-pound wide receiver. He was banged up to start the year, but in the 2 games that we've seen of him so far this season, he's commanded 27% targets per route run. He has 2.09 yards per route run, and he has a 71.2 PFF grade. So he's actually been pretty productive. This Giants wide receiver core, especially now that Kadarius Toney is gone, is wide open, right? There's nobody really of note. The starting receivers for this team right now are Darius Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Marcus Johnson. And now Daniel Bellinger is probably going to be out with the eye injury that he suffered because Kenny Golladay doesn't seem like he's doing anything. Sterling Shepard is on IR, and Kadarius Toney has been traded to the Kansas City Chiefs. So they've been in talks with potentially trading for a guy like Jerry Jeudy with the Denver Broncos, but I do love the outlook of Wan'Dale Robinson rest of the season. The Giants offense is about league average in scoring right now, and Daniel Jones is actually having the best season of his career. So it's a little bit better of a situation than we thought coming into the season. Now with no Kadarius Toney, who would have been the most talented wide receiver in this core, no longer a factor. And speaking of Kadarius Toney, he is my number 4 breakout candidate down the stretch because he was traded to the Kansas City Chiefs this past week for a 3rd rounder and for a late round pick. We know that Kadarius Toney's time in New York wasn't exactly smooth sailing. Apparently, Kadarius Toney has been healthy for a few weeks. According to him on Twitter, he basically said that he's healthy and he's not injured. So the Giants, I guess, used him as being injured as an excuse to not play him and to keep him off the field. I guess there's some kind of tension with the coaching staff and Kadarius Toney, which doesn't speak highly to Kadarius Toney's character because it looks like this Giants coaching staff is really, building a strong culture over there, and Kadarius Toney doesn't really fit that. The good with Kadarius Toney is that he posted 29% targets per route run, 2.13 yards per route run, which was the 2nd highest among rookies last year. And he avoided a tackle at the highest rate among all wide receivers. So he's a very promising rookie coming into this year, which is why a lot of people liked him as a breakout candidate. A lot of people liked him as a sleeper coming into the year. But the Giants giving up on him, sending him over to the Kansas City Chiefs, he wasn't traded or cut for like nothing, right? They send a 3rd round pick for the guy. So I don't think this is like a special teams move. I think they really see something with Kadarius Toney. And there is a possibility that the guy might just be a nutcase. But if he's right mentally, which probably is aided by the fact that he's now playing with Patrick Mahomes in a winning culture with a winning franchise, he could have a monster second half of the season. That's really the upside with Kadarius Toney. There's a lot of downside risk, right? There's a chance that this guy's completely useless down the stretch, injured, whatever the case is. But aside from Travis Kelce and aside from, maybe Juju Smith-Schuster, there's no real established targets taking away from Patrick Mahomes' very, very established, 35 pass attempts per game. If Kadarius Toney can go in there and command that 25%, 30% targets per route run rate that we saw from him as a rookie, then we could be talking about a very, very promising second half of his season, closing out his second year, and a monster ceiling for a guy going into his third season in next year. So from a dynasty perspective, from a redraft perspective, I think that we could be talking about a big time breakout for Kadarius Toney. But moving on to the next guy we have here is Rachaad White, running back for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There's a few paths that I could see for Rachaad White becoming a fantasy breakout candidate down the stretch. The obvious one is that Leonard Fournette goes down, right? He's clearly the handcuff to Leonard Fournette, and Leonard Fournette's 27 years old. He has a history of ankle injuries. He has a history of hamstring issues that have caused him to never play more than 14 games in an entire season. So that's the easy answer, right? Rachaad White's a high-value handcuff to Leonard Fournette. But the other path is Rachaad White carving out a bigger role in this offense without a Leonard Fournette injury, because last night on Thursday Night Football, Rachaad White was able to command 7 of 19 opportunities for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which is pretty much the largest share of the opportunities that we've seen from him so far this season, because when to start the season, we saw Leonard Fournette commanding all the work, right? All the routes, all the targets, all the carries, all the goal line work, all the 2-minute drill snaps, all that kind of stuff. And Rachaad White, with his high level of play that he's shown in recent weeks, has been able to eat into that workload, and Leonard Fournette himself is not playing at the highest level right now. So if Rachaad White keeps stacking games where he looks like the more explosive back, looks like the more electric receiving back especially, he can be at least, an RB3 flex play, which I think he already is right now, and potentially more than that if this backfield kind of shifts towards more of a 50-50 approach, or like I said, Leonard Fournette goes down with an injury. And Todd Bowles himself has talked about wanting to get the young guys more involved, especially now that this team is 3-5 after last night. It's starting to make more and more sense to get Rachaad White more and more involved in the offense. So moving on to the second of the breakout candidates, my number 2 breakout candidate is Treylon Burks. And Treylon Burks, wide receiver for the Tennessee Titans, is first eligible to return from the IR, dealing with a turf toe injury that he suffered in week 5. He is eligible to return next week in week 9 off the turf toe injury. Before he got hurt, he was seeing 23% targets per route run on the season. Just established himself into a full-time role in week 3 with 95% route participation. Then he subsequently got injured the next game. So Treylon Burks has the ability to be a big-time league winner down the stretch, because we know what his profile was coming out of school. He was a first-round wide receiver. He had a great production profile, high, age-adjusted production. All that kind of stuff was well and good. We just didn't get to see the ramp-up period, right? The Titans have nobody in their passing game, and Burks was starting to establish himself as that guy before the injury happened. They basically traded A.J. Brown for Treylon Burks, so they view him as their number 1 wide receiver. Spent a first-round pick on the guy. Some easy matchups down the stretch as well, with Kansas City, with Green Bay, with Los Angeles Chargers, Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Houston Texans in 5 of his next 7 games. So definitely an opportunity for Treylon Burks to break out down the stretch, assuming he comes back healthy in week 9 off of the IR. So definitely, if he's available on the waivers, if he's available as a throw-in for a trade, if you want to do, a 2-for-1 type of trade or a 2-for-2 type of trade where you're giving up 2 better assets for 1 elite asset and you're downgrading to a guy like Treylon Burks, I think that's definitely the type of trade I'd be going out and making if you guys are in a winning position looking for some upside down the stretch. My number 1 breakout candidate down the stretch is actually Michael Gallup, and he is way ahead of schedule right now on his ACL tear, which I think is something that we really not paying attention to. It's understandable why Michael Gallup is not producing at a high level right now, because in Tampa Bay, we're seeing Chris Godwin start to regain his explosiveness. He had a 40-yard catch last night on Thursday Night Football, and Michael Gallup is actually a few weeks behind Chris Godwin. Won't even be 9 months away from his ACL reconstructive surgery until November 10th. So we're talking about a guy that shouldn't even be playing right now. He should have been on the IR to start the season, not play until maybe the Cowboys made the playoffs or something like that. It's very possible that Michael Gallup starts to play better as the season goes along, see more snaps as the season goes along, and that perfectly coincides with the fact that Dak Prescott's now back. They have an easier schedule down the stretch. Michael Gallup is expected to be at or about 90% of his previous, ACL tear before the injury performance level by late November, early December. So if you guys have this guy on your roster, if he's stashed away on your bench and we get to the mid-November point and Michael Gallup's starting to play like Michael Gallup of old, we could be talking about a guy that can be in every week wide receiver 2 down the stretch if the Cowboys offense plays to the level that I think they can play at. So definitely, if you guys are looking to do a 2-for-2 trade, you want to downgrade to a guy like Michael Gallup as the second piece in that trade while getting yourself a stud. Like, for example, if you trade away Raheem Mostert and Dameon Pierce, and you want to go after Jonathan Taylor and Michael Gallup to get yourself a superstar like Jonathan Taylor and also get yourself an upside piece down the stretch with Michael Gallup stashed away on your bench until he regains his full explosiveness, that would be a move that I think would make a ton of sense and help you guys down the stretch of your season. So before we get into the rest of the video, the top 5 sleepers down the stretch of the fantasy season, we got to hear from a word from our sponsors over at Manscaped. Football is back, baby. We're back to seeing Patrick Mahomes throw beautiful footballs all over the field, and your friends at Manscaped are here to help you sling your footballs all over the field all season long. With Manscaped's state-of-the-art technology, we'll have your weapon looking more loaded than the AFC West. Football may be rough, but your manscaping care does not have to be. Join the 6 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped by going to manscaped.com for 20% off plus free shipping using the promo code BUSH. Meet the best value bundle yet for the Manscaped Pocket Rockets. This is the Platinum Package, and at quarterback, we have the Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer. You guys know it. It's a wily vet who makes sure that the unit is running smooth and scoring nonstop. With proprietary skin-safe technology, the lawnmower limits mistakes and protects the balls, plus it's waterproof, so you can use it in the shower as well. At running back, we have the Weed Whacker, and this one will break through and bust through all the holes that you need it to. On the offensive line, we have the unsung heroes, the Crop Preserver Ball Deodorant and Crop Reviver Ball Toner, the Trent Williams and Corey Linsley of Sack Protection, standing strong to keep your boys fresh and clean throughout all 4 quarters. And then at wideout, we have the cleanest duo in the league. We have the Manscaped Body Wash. We have the Manscaped 2-in-1 Premium Conditioner and Shampoo. They attract both the ball and all the ladies to the crowd. Plus, these two leave your skin and your scalp feeling hydrated. That means more play on the field and less water break. And then at tight end, we have the Manscaped Anti-Chafing Boxer Briefs with the signature jewel pouch to make sure your boys are dry and cool. On defense, we have the only thing that you need, which is the Manscaped Deodorant, aluminum-free, ultra-premium deodorant with refined cologne-quality fragrance. It keeps sweat and locker room scents from making any ground, plus it dries clear so the opponent won't even know what hit him. To top it all off, we have the best coach in the league, which is the Shed Travel Bag, as a free bonus, which will keep everything in place for you. So this has got to be a Super Bowl winning roster. Don't take my word for it. Go to manscaped.com. Get 20% off plus free shipping using the promo code BUSH. That's 20% off plus free shipping when you use promo code BUSH. Manscaped, turning your players into the MVP. All right, big shout out to Manscaped. These top 5 sleepers are more so guys that would either be on your waiver wire or going to be extremely cheap in your in trading, and also guys that I think can produce for fantasy down the stretch. So the first guy that we're going to talk about is Cam Akers. And before you guys tell me that I'm just clinging to my preseason takes of Cam Akers, the reason I think Cam Akers is a good sleeper is because, number one, he's probably not, widely thought of in your leagues, right? He's probably a guy that everybody's given up on, thinks is terrible. Cam Akers probably won't be an LA Ram this time on Tuesday when the trade deadline hits. It's been reported that the Buffalo Bills are front runners to trade for him or, potentially sign him if he gets cut, which would definitely obviously be an upgrade from an offensive standpoint, going from the Rams, how they're playing this year, to the Buffalo Bills. But honestly, any place that's willing to give Cam Akers a workload is probably better than the LA Rams right now because they clearly just have a fractured relationship. The big development and why I think Cam Akers can be a decent sleeper is because of the rest and the recovery that he's getting right now, number one, and also the medical data that we have about Achilles injuries, according to Dr. Deepak Chona on Twitter at SportsMD Analytics. Dr. Deepak Chona on Twitter pegged him to be at full explosiveness by 15 months relating from the injury. So he suffered the injury in July of 2021. 3 months from now would be, October of 2021, November of 2021, and then you have a year from then, which is right now. So what we're talking about with Cam Akers is a guy that did not look good at the beginning of the season, right? But from a medical standpoint, he shouldn't look good. He's only, 12 months away from the Achilles. He didn't look good in the playoffs last year either. So what we're talking about here is a guy that could have a more fruitful second half of the season in a new environment with a new team, hopefully a team like the Buffalo Bills that has a lot of high value touches available. Then we could be talking about a guy that is actually a decent sleeper down the stretch. So that's the case with Cam Akers. Doesn't cost you a whole lot. Maybe he's on your waiver wire right now. Maybe, again, you can get him as a stash for your bench, an upside piece for your bench down the stretch of the season. I think he makes a ton of sense as well. Number 4, we have a guy that will cost you absolutely nothing because he is available in all of my waiver wires, and I play in very, very deep leagues. So if he's available in mine, he's probably available in yours as well. And that guy's Boston Scott. A lot of the biggest league winners are usually guys who benefit from injury. And typically that happens at the running back position because it's a position that is directly correlated to opportunity. So if the starter goes out in front of them, usually the backup is the guy that wins people leagues. Ergo, guys like Darrell Williams last year, Sony Michel, Rashad Penny, guys that were thrust into workloads down the stretch of the season. And if you guys stash these guys on your bench, then you lucked into yourself some RB2 caliber production. And this is how I won my fantasy championship last year. I started Darrell Williams, I started Rachaad Penny, and I started Sony Michel in my fantasy championship matchup. And I left Antonio Gibson on my bench, who was my every week RB2 for the entire season last year. So Boston Scott saw 14 opportunities in the 4 games he started last year without Miles Sanders in the lineup. And that included games where Jordan Howard was also heavily involved as well. Jordan Howard's no longer on the roster. Miles Sanders is still Miles Sanders. I know he's been probably one of the better values this year in the like 8th, 9th, 10th round where you probably drafted him, but he still missed 11 games over the last 2 years. He's still a running back. And this is a 6-0 team that's top 5 in scoring right now. So if he ever were to miss time, Boston Scott would be extremely, extremely valuable as at least, a mid RB2, similar to how we probably view like a Michael Carter right now. Worth a stash for your bench, knowing that he is absolutely free right now. And those of you guys that are in really deep leagues like me usually don't get a lot of production off the waiver wire coming at the running back position unless you predict it coming, like what you're doing with Boston Scott by stashing him. So if you're holding, a JD McKissick or a Marvin Jones or somebody that's, a low level, off the waiver wire type of production piece, if you've had some bye weeks already, especially, drop that guy, stash Boston Scott at the end of your bench, and just wait and see, right? I mean, if nothing happens, then what, worst case scenario, you wasted a bench spot. But if something happens to Miles Sanders, you're going to have yourself an every week RB2. And speaking of an every week RB2, if something happens to the starter, we have D'Ernest Johnson, who is my third sleeper of the video. A lot of smoke around the Kareem Hunt trade rumor, and this is really why D'Ernest Johnson makes a ton of sense, because it's been talked about that the Rams are heavily interested, the Eagles are really interested, the Bills are really interested in Kareem Hunt. They've all inquired, they've all made offers ahead of the trade deadline for Kareem Hunt. And if Kareem Hunt gets traded, we know what happens, right? We'd love it if Nick Chubb got the full workload, but that's not what we saw last year. Last year, we saw D'Ernest Johnson just slide right into the Kareem Hunt role. Nick Chubb keep and maintain the role that he's been very efficient in throughout the entire year. And then suddenly, D'Ernest Johnson becomes the new Kareem Hunt, where he's the de facto handcuff to Nick Chubb, and he also has this standalone role where he's valuable as a receiving back or as a low-end flex piece as well. He is free right now. He's available on your waiver wires. I guarantee it. And he absolutely will not be free if Kareem Hunt were to be traded. If Kareem Hunt was traded, a lot of people would drop a lot of fab bucks on D'Ernest Johnson. So go ahead, get ahead of the curve. If he's not available in your league, it's probably because somebody else in your league is doing the same thing that I'm telling you to do. Number 2 sleeper that I have that should be available on your waiver wire right now as well is Van Jefferson. The Los Angeles Rams are one of the least explosive offenses in the NFL right now. And not that anybody would have predicted that, but I think the reason why that is because they lost all of their explosive playmakers in the offseason. Deshaun Jackson, Odell Beckham Jr., and Van Jefferson were the guys that were scoring the long touchdowns, the big plays for them last year. And that opened up things for guys like Cooper Kupp and for the run game last year when Sony Michel was the starter. He was very productive. Van Jefferson in 2021 had 4 touchdown catches of over 50 yards. We're talking about a guy that was a legitimate deep, big play threat that had a lot of spike weeks, especially if you guys had him in best ball. I'm sure he was really good from that perspective. His season debut could be made this week against the San Francisco 49ers. He was activated off IR on Monday, and that big play element we know is not coming from Allen Robinson. We know it's not coming from Ben Skoranek and Tyler Higbee and some of the guys that they have right there. If they want big plays, it's going to have to be Cooper Kupp, because their running backs and their other receivers and their tight ends are not going to provide them with big plays. Van Jefferson could open up this offense, be the sole occupant of that big play role, a role that he shared with Odell Beckham, that he shared with Deshaun Jackson last year, and could be a weekly like boom bust wide receiver 3 down the stretch for your lineup and really ignite this Rams passing game in general and help out Cooper Kupp and help out Matthew Stafford and all those guys involved. So Van Jefferson, if he's available on your waiver wire, definitely go pick him up, stash him at the end of your bench. Could be very valuable for you down the stretch. And my number 1 sleeper down the stretch is Isiah Pacheco, running back for the Kansas City Chiefs. We all got baited into thinking it was going to be Isiah Pacheco's season in week 7, because prior to the games kicking off on Sunday, it was announced that Isiah Pacheco would be the starter, but we didn't really see that out of the Kansas City Chiefs backfield. The Kansas City Chiefs are on bye this week, and that is big, big news, because I do think we're going to get some post-hype sleeper appeal out of Isiah Pacheco for a couple reasons, and there's 5 of them. Number 1, because of the baiting that we got last week, a lot of people probably dropped Isiah Pacheco to fill their lineup for bye weeks, or just because they're annoyed, and he's still available right now in 52% of leagues, and that number could increase because, like I said, Kansas City is on bye right now. So if people don't want to stash him, he might end up on people's waiver wires, and you should absolutely go pick him up if he's available in your league. Number 2, the report that he was going to be the starter was from Ian Rappaport, who's a reputable source, and we have no reason why he would lie. So it's probably a legitimate thing that Kansas City wants in-house. Number 3, they're coming off their bye. Post-bye rookie bump. We've seen this from running backs all over the place. We saw it a couple times last year with guys like Michael Carter. We saw it last year with guys like Javonte Williams. We've seen it from rookie running backs in the past, especially when a team expresses interest in wanting that guy to be the starting running back. Number 4, the Chiefs traded for Kadarius Toney as well, which could make this offense more explosive than it already is. Number 5, Isiah Pacheco outsnapped Clyde Edwards-Helaire 30% to 27% before the bye, outcarried him 36% to 27% before the bye as well. He already started to inch away at Clyde Edwards-Helaire's starting running back role. Now, Jerick McKinnon actually led the backfield in snaps and all that kind of stuff, but I do think coming off the bye with Isiah Pacheco, he's performing well. He looks like a good running back. I do think he could be a guy that helps win people some leagues down the stretch. He's attached to the Kansas City Chiefs. Need I say more? Isiah Pacheco, definitely a guy. If he's available in your leagues, go out and get him. If he's available for very, very cheap in trades right now because he's on bye week, go out and send some offers for him. Send away, some of your depth wide receivers because they will not have the upside that Isiah Pacheco has down the stretch. So if you guys enjoyed this video, like I said, leave a like for me down below. Really appreciate all the support. Subscribe to the channel if you are new around here as well. It doesn't cost you anything, and we really, really appreciate it. I'm telling you right now, you guys will not find a more in-depth YouTube channel covering everything that you guys need to know during the season, during the Dynasty offseason, during the NFL draft season, during the summer when we're talking about doing our fantasy drafts, everything over here at Fantasy Stock Exchange will have you covered. So make sure you hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Check out the Patreon link down below in the pinned comment for access to our Dynasty rankings, to access to our rest of season rankings, our weekly start sit rankings, first dibs on Dynasty decisions, all of our matchup charts, all that kind of stuff is available for you over at patreon.com/Fantasy Stock Exchange. So if that interests you, check it out. But with that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.
Why you need the money?